When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
Welcome back to the Elias Macko Show. Now, in Montreal and surrounding areas, the proportion of English-speaking Quebecers is steadily declining, particularly in bilingual municipalities. Between 2011 and 2021, several traditionally English majority areas, like Westmount, like Pointe Claire, saw their percentage of native English speakers fall below the 50% threshold required for bilingual status. Currently, 54 of 89 bilingual municipalities are under that 50% mark. Now, last version of Bill 101, Bill 96 said those municipalities can retain their status with municipal approval. It does mean, however, that there are growing concerns about the vitality of those English communities. Andrew Caddell is with us, president of the Task Force on Linguistic Policy. And you have to follow up Jean Charest, Andrew. I apologize.
Not at all. Always good to follow up somebody who's got a good reputation.
So let's talk about this. And I notice it. Sometimes I walk into Westmount and I say, man, there's a heck of a lot of French in so-called English Westmount. Things are changing. What's your take?
Well, I've always said this is a bit of a crock because, it's like Mark Twain said, there's lies, damned lies, and statistics. So the way that an Anglophone is determined in Quebec is somebody who spoke English from the time they were born. Now, we know there's about 600,000 people who are of British descent or descent from the Commonwealth or the United States who are in Quebec. And that's what the Quebec government says is an Anglophone. Mm-hmm. Well, that's absolute nonsense because there are people from countries all around the world who have come here, some of them when they were children, and have spoken English all their lives, but their mother tongue was something else. So a Holocaust survivor who came here at 5 years old and who's now in his or her 80s has spoken English all their lives, but they're not considered to be an Anglophone. And so that's why you have the situation like in Côte Saint-Luc or in Montreal West or in Pointe Claire or Westmount, that there's lower than 50% Anglophone, according to the Quebec government. But that's nonsense because, in fact, Côte Saint-Luc and all those different places are more like 80 or 90% people who use English as their common language. And there's this barrier that the Quebec government and the Quebec media, they just refuse to acknowledge that somebody who speaks English in their daily life is an Anglophone.
Okay, so let's rejig the numbers and keep that in mind, right? So the numbers are actually higher. There are still a lot of communities, they have bilingual status, they are well below that 50% threshold. And so, some municipalities are concerned about being able to provide those services in the future. And I know residents are concerned about being able to get those services. How should we be discussing this first and foremost?
Well, this is why we founded the task force in 2021. The Task Force on Linguistic Policy is the only organization that is fighting for people at the grassroots. And, we have done very, very well. We're challenging Bill 96 in court. We're going to go to the Supreme Court if we're allowed to challenge the notwithstanding clause. And next year, we're going to be doing a roadshow right across Quebec to talk to people about these sorts of issues. But there are 1.25 million of us, not 600,000 of us, and we come from all around the world. And, it's the flip side of this is the historic Anglophone definition in Bill 96, which says that you have to have been educated for the majority of your primary and secondary schooling could be considered an historic Anglophone. Well, Gemma Baines, who came here when she was 13, 14 years old and made a huge contribution to the Black community in Montreal, she would not be considered an historic Anglophone. Uh-huh. My son, who spent 10 in the States, would not be considered an historic Anglophone. He was born in Montreal and went to Dawson and McGill. and served in the reserves in Bosnia. I mean, like these are people that have made huge contributions to our communities and are not recognized as being Anglophone. And the Quebec government and the Quebec media have to get their head around this. And so this article in Le Devoir that appeared the other day is absolute nonsense. It's, and it like the reporter doesn't even go beyond the statistics to say, what the definition of an Anglophone is.
Because
we have so many. Yeah,
it focuses on maternal language. That's the flaw, you believe.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. Did you speak Greek when you were a child?
It's so interesting because I'm trying to think what would have been technically my first language. I know if I had to answer a survey, I would say English, even if I probably learned Greek words first. I know, because I know how the statistics work. I would still answer English because that is my de facto maternal language. That is the language we spoke in the household primarily, especially with my brothers and sisters, right? So yeah, I mean, that's the other side of thing. Could I just throw this at you, Andrew, with Andrew Caddell, president of the Task Force on Linguistic Policy? Throughout Quebec, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think every single municipality that had to adopt, right, that resolution to keep bilingual status did so. Isn't that a fantastic side, that when it comes down to it, municipalities do want to keep their bilingual status, do want to offer those services?
You look at Gaspé, just recently, they have been told that they can only operate in French because they don't have bilingual status. But their mayors come out and said, we're going to provide as much English to the 20% of our residents that we can. And even here in Kamouraska, our town council passed an exception to Bill 96 so that we can give services to tourists, because otherwise our tourist bureau wouldn't be able to serve people in English because that's how strict the law is. And so to say, I'm going to do a little pitch here. If people really, really want to see a grassroots movement supporting the fight against Bill 96, contribute to the task force. We have raised over $200,000 so far for our legal cases and for the things that we're doing in the media and making people aware and collecting stories of people that are being discriminated against. So go to www.thetaskforce.ca, and that's where you can contribute, because we really do need small, large, and any donations that we can get.
The taskforce.ca, and you can help fund that very important lawsuit. Andrew, we'll catch up again real soon, okay?
You bet. Thanks a lot, Elias.